I'm Leslie Maddox, an engineer turned homeschool mom, and I want to help you customize your homeschool. In the last Homeschool Plan Decoded video, we talked about how to create a custom schedule for your academic year. Let's continue customizing your homeschool by creating custom weekly and daily routines. Deciding how you want your weeks and days to flow will help when it's time to purchase curricula and create lesson plans. The Homeschool Plan Decoded Starter Kit contains worksheets to help you set up your routines, and you can find a link to the starter kit below. If you don't have the starter kit, grab some paper and let's get started. Let's first work on the weekly routine. The first question to ask yourself here is, how many days a week do you want to homeschool? Generally, you can choose between 4 days or 5 days a week. Just keep in mind that the academic year schedule you created was probably for 5 days a week. So switching to 4 days a week may require changes to your academic year if you need to homeschool a certain number of days. If 4 days a week sounds appealing to you, I recommend sticking with 5 days a week and marking one day like Friday as an easy day or a fun day. Fun Fridays has a nice ring to it. And then when it comes time to choose curricula, look for options that support lesson plans for 4 days a week or less, or that you can compress down to 4 days a week. That way you can try to get most of your schoolwork done during your regular 4 days of school, but that 5th day is available for makeup for weeks where schoolwork is interrupted due to illness, an appointment, or even something fun like a field trip or a birthday. Just don't get too married to the idea of a fun Friday, because later on in the homeschool planning process, you'll be considering whether or not you'd like to take part in a homeschool co-op or put your kids into a class. In that situation, the day spent out of the house will count as your 5th day. So next, mark down regular commitments that you have during the week. This includes extracurricular activities and work or volunteer commitments. Even something like taking younger kids to Mother's Day out counts as a commitment, because drop off and pick up will interrupt your day. I also mark days when our cleaning service comes, because we need to get the house ready and cleaned and then clear out so that we're not in the way. And I mark when our lawn service comes so that we don't do school outside when they're here. If you have young children that require a strict schedule due to nap times or feedings, mark those as well. You'll be surprised to see how quickly your week fills up once you take all of these things into consideration. And it's important to keep this in mind so that you don't overload your days with too many things to do. After marking down commitments, start thinking about whether or not you'd like to cover certain subjects on certain days. If you're new to homeschooling, this part of planning out your weekly routine may need to wait until you're working on lesson plans. The thing to remember is that you may not need to cover every subject every day. For elementary especially, I usually like to schedule core subjects like math, reading, writing, and spelling for 4 or 5 days a week. For us, that's Monday through Thursday if possible. Subjects like science and history I usually limit to 2 days a week. Of course, this will depend on the curricula that you choose, but that's why we're talking about it now, so that you're aware that you have options. One year I chose a social studies curriculum that I assumed would work for 2 days a week, but instead needed to schedule it for 4 days a week. It was an expensive distance learning curriculum, so there wasn't a whole lot of wiggle room. It frustrated me because that wasn't how I wanted us to spend our time. Social studies is not a challenging or especially interesting subject to us, so I didn't appreciate having to budget that amount of time on it each week. That's why I'm encouraging you to think through this before researching curricula, because you want to create a homeschool that fits into your life rather than getting stuck with curricula that requires your homeschool and family to function in undesirable ways. Of course, always refer back to your local homeschool laws. You may need to spend a certain number of hours on certain subjects. And use the weekly routine planner worksheet from the Homeschool Plan Decoded Starter Kit, or create your own to brainstorm how you would like your week to flow. Keep in mind that this is just a draft. You'll finalize it after you purchase curricula and make lesson plans. Now let's talk about creating a daily routine. The Starter Kit has a daily routine planner worksheet to help you as you brainstorm what your average homeschool day might look like. Notice that I use the term daily routine rather than daily schedule. That's because sticking to a rigid schedule will not be life-giving for your family. Instead, I recommend time blocking your days. Time blocking has been transformational for us, and I think that it can be for you too. The idea is that you think about your day as consisting of blocks of time with a particular activity or set of activities assigned to each block. The blocks are not necessarily assigned to a particular time of day. Instead, put the blocks in the order that you want them to create a routine. That way, instead of looking at the clock to determine what you should be doing, you can just flow from one block to the next. Changing your routine is as simple as moving the blocks around. You may have time blocks for schoolwork, naps, play, chores, and meals. In our homeschool, I dedicate 2 blocks to schoolwork, one for independent work where my students work on their own, and another for schoolwork that requires me to teach them or help them. An example time block routine can look like this. This is actually the routine that I'm currently using. I'm not sharing it for you to adopt it. Your family is different than mine, so my time block routine probably won't work for you. It's simply meant to be an example and to get your mental juices flowing. You'll see that our first block is for my kids' morning chores. That's when they get dressed, make beds, brush teeth, and do chores like unload the dishwasher or start their laundry. The next block is for breakfast and independent work. They're in the same block because my kids eat at different times, and sometimes they do their independent work while they're actually eating. Next, we have lunch and chores, when my kids eat and do their kitchen chores, and maybe a 5-minute cleanup depending on the state of the clutter in our house. After the lunch and chores block, we have an outside play block. This is a time block that I move around depending on the time of year. We live in Texas, so afternoons during a lot of the school year are just too hot for outside play unless we're in the pool. During those times, I move our outside play time block to the morning or early evening. Right now, it's after lunch. After our outside play time block, we move into the mommy-assisted schoolwork time block. This is when I move from child to child, starting with the youngest, and do whatever teaching I need to do, answer questions, and grade assignments. After my kids finish their last assignment for the day, they have the rest of the day to work on their personal projects or just play. If we have an appointment during the day, I'll think about what time blocks I want to move around or just delete for the day. They might not have outside playtime, or I'd move that block to the evening after schoolwork is done. Maybe mommy-assisted schoolwork isn't going to happen that day. It just depends on what's going on. These time blocks work really well for us because we're not looking at the clock all of the time. We're just flowing from one block to the next. Of course, you may want to assign a general time to time blocks for meals, and classes or other commitments that are on a schedule will require an assigned time as well. So on your daily routine, write in those activities or time blocks that are time specific. Those can serve as guideposts for the rest of your day. Then decide what time blocks you need and put them where they seem to fit best. Another thing to think about, what will you be doing during those time blocks? So for example, when my kids are doing their independent work, I'm working on personal projects. When they're outside playing, I might read or go outside with them to walk and listen to an audiobook. Can you get housework or paid work done while your kids are doing independent schoolwork or napping? What part of the day will be best for one-on-one teaching or group activities? The morning or afternoon? Again, remember that this is just a draft of your daily routine. You may need to change it when you get started on lesson plans or if you sign up for a class. I change our daily routine at least a couple of times a year, depending on the weather, projects that I'm working on, and my kids' schoolwork. But starting off with an idea of how you want your days and weeks to flow will help you later in the planning process and keep you from taking too much on. In the next Homeschool Planning Decoded video, we'll talk about the final big item involved in defining your family needs for homeschool planning, academic objectives. Remember that you can access all of the videos that walk you through the steps of the Homeschool Planning Decoded method of customizing your homeschool right now at the link below, and happy planning.